Well, welcome into another exciting episode of The Scene. I am your host, Bubba Startz, and with me today is owner and founder of Rebrace Renewal Therapy and Wellness Collective, and also the host of the Real Family Eats podcast, of which I was just a guest on, Reesa Morala. Reesa, welcome to my show.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I'm excited to have you. I was thrilled to see your name pop up on the calendar, having just watched and rewatched our episode on the Real Family Eats podcast. But before we get too far into everything, give our listeners a little bit of your background, and then we'll kind of jump into all these things that you're into.
Absolutely. So I am a mom of two. I'm also a licensed marriage and family therapist, and I specialize in really supporting parents. I don't feel like there's enough support out there for the actual parents. So I support them from newborns all the way through all the life stages to empty nesters and just providing that support. And so I do that through my own practice, Embrace Renewal Therapy, where I do workshops, I do retreats, and educational classes. And I also host, as you mentioned, the Real Family Eats. And that was really born out of, again, that passion to just support parents and really talk about what really happens behind closed doors that I feel like not enough of our society really talks about the hard stuff.
And I feel like since we've had that conversation, like the whole world is waking up to like, oh, we can just talk about real stuff, right? It seems
Yeah.
like such a theme in our content that we see around us now. And that it was kind of a collective awakening for a lot of us that like, hey, um there are real people out here. There are real people on the internet. We can connect with them. And even if you don't have millions of followers, you are affecting people's lives. And I kind of shared with you before the show that my wife was even listening to the Real Family Eats and listening to our episode, and she doesn't really engage with much of what I do, mostly because I'm doing so much, right? And she's involved with me, but not necessarily that she's hearing something for the first time there, but she's hearing it in a different light. She's not hearing it necessarily from her husband or her co-parent. She's hearing it from Bubba, right? And I think that's why, and especially I love the format of your show so much that we get to share a recipe, and it's just a very inviting atmosphere to the show. And I imagine that a lot of those same things that I experienced on your podcast is kind of how your practice is as well. Is that fair?
I would like to think so. I think that's one of the areas that for me I find as my superpower. I can't tell you the number of people who will sit in my room and go, "Oh my goodness, I just met you, and I've never told anybody this, but here it is," because they do feel just safe, if you will, invited to kind of go in there and just talk and be real.
And I think the questions that you ask, and maybe it's just the personality of you, right? That disarming smile, and that puts people at ease as well. But you really ask some poignant questions, and even I mean, I felt like our podcast episode was a therapy session for me in many ways. I don't know if all of your episodes turn out like that. I'm sure a little bit. It just any conversation that you have, just because of your work and how long you've been doing this, that it's kind of born out of just a natural curiosity that you have of knowing people and why they behave a certain way, and what is it that kind of triggered you to behave this way.
Yeah, I love that you use the word curiosity because that's definitely one of my like cores that I love to just get curious. And I think if our world just in general had a little bit more curiosity instead of just immediately jumping to assumptions or judgment, that gosh, it would just help so much because then you get to really learn and understand the person sitting across from you.
And I don't know that that is having never, I mean, I've done some, drug counseling and different things like that, but I've never been in a very typical therapy environment, right? A long-term seeing the same person every week or every month and building that relationship with someone. But I have to imagine that not all therapists are coming at it from a place of personal curiosity almost, right? They're kind of just going through the motions of a job or a career and don't necessarily, I don't feel like that's how you get to the heart of the issue. And there has to be so much trust built up with someone to answer all of the questions honestly.
Yeah, absolutely. And everybody has their own styles and the different modalities and the way that you're approaching. I mean, you talk about all the way back to Freudian times. So that wasn't necessarily about curiosity, if you will. And so again, I think it's a style. And for me, it feels authentic to really just want to get to know and to empathize and understand on a deeper level. Absolutely.
Do you feel that that's changing in the world of therapy as a whole?
The curiosity piece of it.
Well, and just the modalities, right? We're not really doing Freudian therapy and coming at it from that angle anymore. And especially with the transfer of information now, I think with the internet and being able to communicate with people that are across the country or around the world, you're getting a much different experience now in life than you were before, where everything was more localized, of 50, even 50 years ago, right? You weren't, 20 years ago, you weren't able to see a therapist with things like BetterHelp and these on-air apps. And I don't know the efficacy of a lot of these things, but I know that you and I have had some really poignant and interesting conversations each time that we've gotten together over Zoom. So I have to imagine that it would be just as effective in the broader world, right? So I guess what I'm getting at is that is is the whole world of therapy kind of changing, and has it changed to bring us to this point to where someone like you and that curiosity is driving more of the whole culture of therapy, I guess.
Yeah. I definitely think it has changed, it has evolved. And what's really neat is there's so many different modalities out there, which I think is really helpful because when we're dealing with individuals and humans, we're all unique. And so the way that our brain processes things is different from each person to the next. And so if we're trying to kind of fit one standard modality and expect it to help everybody, I feel like that's just an unrealistic ask. That's a lot to ask from just one person's research, if you will. And so, what's really neat, I find, is that there are different modalities. Yes, maybe they have some similar roots or address some similar things, but it's done in different ways, just like they're trying to change, and teach our kids now different ways to do math. I think it's the same idea of can we get creative on the ways that we're really kind of addressing each person so that it's really tailored to help them get the most efficacy in their treatment and in the outcomes as well.
It's really fun to kind of watch it evolve, and we're watching it evolve in real time throughout our lives. I believe that we're close to the same age and raising young children and having parents that came from a completely different world, right? Our parents are all born pre-internet and just from a totally different, almost a different planet, right? Like the whole world has changed so much, especially these last 20 years, longer than that, really. I was thinking, oh, geez, I wasn't even in high school 20 years ago now. That's when did this happen? Just love it. And I had a great time, being with you on your show and kind of talking about some of the things that I've dealt with because I've never had a real conversation about this with someone who's not personally invested in it, right?
Mm.
Like my family knows the story, my wife knows the stories, but they all have a personal affectation, good or bad, right, towards the situation. So it was nice to kind of just share everything that I've been through and to have someone go, "Oh wow, that was really tough," or "Oh, I'm curious about this part, and how did that affect you?" And I think that there's not a person on the planet that wouldn't benefit from therapy in some modality, right? Of some form and talking with someone and able to work through our feelings. I think it's so important in today's world.
Absolutely. And I think what you mentioned there is just to have someone to kind of dialogue with. Many of these items, we encounter things in life that we've never encountered before. And so to expect us to know what to do or how to kind of take a pause and to zoom out and look at the stadium view and kind of process some of those things. That's not necessarily something they teach in school. And so I think naturally to have someone there who maybe has a little bit more of that training to be able to just say, hey, let's slow down a little bit, let's zoom out, or like, hey, like how do you think your brain is processing this, or how is it making sense of these things, can just be really helpful. It doesn't mean that something is quote unquote wrong. It's just you're getting some extra support. And gosh, who doesn't need a little bit of extra support? Because I know I do.
Well, and especially parents, right? Being a parent yourself and me as well is like you're always running into stuff that you've never seen before. You every single day is a new challenge, and it's hard to slow down when everything is moving so fast. We just finished baseball season yesterday, and I'm almost like, well, what do I do with my hands now? Like, where do I
Right?
go? All of a sudden, we have had somewhere to be for 2 solid months on Tuesdays and Thursday and Monday, and every single day was planned out for you. And then it's almost like, for me, I'll relate it to prison. It's almost like stepping out of the gate and every like, well, what do we do now? Like we didn't make any plan for after that because it was like, well, because of playoffs and things, you don't know when it's ever going to be over, right?
Yeah.
And as parents, I think even if you have, teenagers especially, but my son's 12, he'll be turning a teenager this year, and it's like, man, you don't really like I need to really start training you how to live without me now, right? And it's less about like, hey, I'm trying to keep you alive and teach you right from wrong. And now as you're like moving these kids, and I don't know how old your kids are, but where I'm looking at him, I was like, man, you got 5 years to figure life out, and then you're on your own, And it's not that, right? But I kind of want to like scare him a little bit because even I was like, hey man, how did we get here? Right? Like we were in the
Mm-hmm.
car all together. What turns did we make? And there was only like three. How did we get here? And watching his brain just go blank where he's like, I have no idea. It's like, okay, well, we're gonna have to start working on we're to start working on a little spatial awareness and some
Yeah.
environmental awareness, right? Like knowing where you're at in the world and being able to navigate that life, I think starts with like how to read a map.
Matt, you try to tell these kids nowadays, those old things that you would put in the glove compartment. Yeah, it's quite a skill, absolutely. And like you said, it's different for having to teach our kids nowadays versus maybe our parents and their parents before them, because it is an evolving world, and kind of because it is evolving, you never know what their experience is going to be like. And so it is just constantly kind of flying by the seat of your pants and hope and pray that you're doing the right thing, and you can just support them and love them through it.
Right. Yeah. And you touched on something so key there is like, we don't know what's coming. So, like, how do I prepare my child for what's coming in their lifetimes? Where I'm like, look, I'm going to give you all the information that I have. I'm going to give you everything. I don't know if it's going to help you or not. I don't
Mm-hmm.
know what world it's going to be in 20 more years, right? Because things are accelerating so quickly now, especially with, artificial intelligence just dominating the landscape now. It's everywhere that you look, right? And even 2 years ago, that wasn't even really on most people's radar, right? So
Yeah.
how do we prepare our kids for that? And I think it starts with, honest conversations, maybe over a meal where real families should eat, right? It's huge in our family. We're around the table every single night. And I'm sure you are as often as possible as well, and sharing those moments and yeah, just being a family. It's so hard to be disconnected. And I was with an aunt and uncle of mine recently, and kind of like stayed at their house overnight, and it was really just like everybody's in their own spaces and on their phones and like in their own worlds inside of the house. And it's like, wow, that's so much different than like our relationship with our kids, because we don't have them on tablets. I mean, our kids are 8 and 9, so it's well, I'm not trying to put them on that stuff constantly, but growing up where I'm looking ahead, right? I'm looking ahead and like, well, eventually these kids are going to have phones in their hands and things. And like, how do we maintain that physical relationship with them, when they're introduced to that digital world. And it's a little scary.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I can't tell you the number of times that even my 9-year-old is like, well, when can I get a phone? It's like, no, no. And I heard somebody once say, oh, you can get a phone at the same age that I got a phone. And it's like, oh, I like that
27.
idea. Right. Yeah. So I've been joking with them of recent. I was like, yeah, you can get a phone at the same age that I got one, which was in like, right before I went to college.
When you needed it, right? When you were finally going to be
Exactly.
far enough away from home that they felt like they needed to, which I feel like that kind of leads us into another interesting conversation. Do you feel, and because you work with parents, do you feel like there is more helicopter parenting going on now than decades previously because of the phones and the access to, we have the GPS trackers on everyone and all of these things, right? Like, do you feel like it's changed parents almost more than it's changed the kids?
I think yes. And I think the accessibility that we have with the technology certainly just helps kind of exacerbate the situation. But I think it's actually even beyond that. I think there was definitely a shift because I don't know about kind of your the way that you were raised, but I know I hear a lot from parents these days that, they were maybe raised with a lot of hands off and just like go and figure out your life, feed yourself your meals. And so as a response, I feel like many parents now are like, well, I want to be involved. And so they're wanting to do things differently. But then we almost kind of swing the pendulum all the way to the other side. And instead of just kind of finding that balance, we're like, I want to be involved in everything. And so if that means I need to put an Apple tag on you so I can find you at all times, I'm going to do that. And so I think that's part of where some of that comes from, at least what I've seen.
Right. We are the pendulum swinging. All of us latchkey kids, right?
Yes.
Are now like, hey, we're not raising our children like that because look how screwed up most of us turned out.
It's why I have a job, right?
Probably. It's why you're going to stay employed for a very long time. And I think you've got a great practice. I love what you bring to the table as a licensed therapist and the communities that you're helping, right? You touched off it right off the top, like where's the support for parents? And
Mm-hmm.
because of a lot of the things we've been talking about in between times, like people used to get together. You used to have support with other parents. And now, because I think because of the technology and we've all kind of pulled away from our physical communities, it opens the door for practices like yours because we no longer have that in society necessarily of adult friends, right? Adult friend groups and having sounding boards with other parents and feeling like you weren't going to be judged. I think maybe a little bit more in your area of the world, being in a little bit more liberal state of California, maybe so than South Dakota is. But it's just such a wild time to be alive, isn't it, Reese?
It really is. Absolutely. And I think what you mentioned there, that judgment piece is absolutely key. In fact, I just did a talk about just really the plea and the need that we have to shift our society from that judgment of parents because it's so easy for us to, go to the grocery store, go on an airplane and you see the crying baby and I feel like most people's instincts are to like, oh, you need to manage your child better or hey, quiet your child. We're going to that place of judgment versus how can I support you, how can I help you? And because of that, I think it just really perpetuates this isolation. Like you said, not only are we doing the isolation because of the technology, we're all buried in our screens, but just because then you go out and you get some of the judgment. So then naturally you want to kind of pull inward. You don't want to go outside. You don't, I mean, parenting is a vulnerable experience. And so when you're getting people just judging the crap out of everything that you're doing, it's like, well, then, okay, I'm going to stay indoors where nobody can see what's happening because they're just going to judge me and tell me how wrong I'm doing it or how I should do it. And really, gosh, that's got to stop because parenting is hard enough. We don't need all, the Judge Judy's coming in telling us what we should be doing differently.
No, that exposure of the vulnerability, right, is such a terrifying thing. And, I think 30, 40 years ago, it was just the mother-in-law's judgment, right?
Right.
It was just, and now it's everyone's mother-in-law and
Yes.
everyone else, right? That you're kind of putting it out there. And not everyone's built, the same, right? I'm fairly impervious to judgment, just from the life that I've lived. And like, look, you can't, what are you going to sentence me to a decade in prison like that judge did, right? I've been judged, right?
Hmm.
Physically.
Right.
So I'm not necessarily susceptible to that, but my wife didn't live that experience. So she is very raw to a lot of these things, and not necessarily not being the biological mother of my two children, but having been their mom for the last 7 years, right? Like, she's extremely vulnerable to those things because it always feels like somebody's going to try to take them away, right? And in this day and age, I think all parents are a little scared of, of government overreach and having someone, threaten to take your children away. I can't think of anything scarier than that. So no wonder
Hmm.
parents are, going inward and not sharing as much about the struggles that they're facing, because it's easy to feel like you're the only one dealing with that. And I think that brings me to kind of wrap this whole thing up. It's why your podcast is so important, not just to like you and your practice, but to our society, to our world. I hope that other therapists that have a practice similar to yours see this, and maybe totally outside of the same realm that you're in, see that what they can be to the greater world and not just to a small list of clients, right? Just getting on and having conversations can be so powerful to the world that I say it a lot, and I probably said it on our show, that this is how God is changing the world, right? This is how us sharing ourselves in a space where we feel comfortable, right? We feel comfortable here, but then we're able to put that vulnerability out into the world and to have kind of a barrier between the judgment, right? To put up
Yeah.
that barrier because you're on a different program, and that you're able to kind of put a little buffer in there. And that's why I think your program, the Real Family Eats podcast, is so important, and why I was so happy to have a chance to come on and share a little bit of my story with the world.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that because really that's my hope is just to make it feel a little less lonely because it is just it can be so isolating and like you said because we're not necessarily sharing because it doesn't feel like a safe space it just really compounds that loneliness especially when you're in a parenting milestone or transition that's really hard and when you don't know what to do and you're just trying to do your best and hope and pray that you're setting them up for success because again at the end of the day I don't think I've ever really met a parent truly who's like sitting there and how can I like ruin my child's life like I don't believe that that's what we're trying to do and so really the hope and the goal is not only to hear a story that helps you feel a little less alone helps you maybe feel seen and normalize that this is really hard, but also give you maybe a little bit of hope that hey, there are others there. There are ways that we can get out of it, and hear some of that vulnerability and give them a little bit more confidence to kind of share their own, and do a little reaching out. And at the same time, I feel like the mental load of what are we going to eat for dinner or what are we going to feed the kids right especially those picky kids so then you can come and not only hear a story that maybe helps warm your soul but then you get a lovely recipe like yours which my family loved by the way um, that warms the belly so that's my hope.
I can't wait till the cookbook comes out. I hope you're saving all these recipes.
I do have a list of them all, yeah, but I had to, credit everybody, make sure that we all get in there. So
There
these
you
are
go.
some
Hey, you
really
you
yummy
used
recipes.
all of us to write your book. Well done, Reesa. Well done.
Yep, just as like genius, plotting over here.
Yeah, yeah, just like we all are on how we can ruin our kids' lives, right?
Oh my goodness, yes.
Well, Reesa, it's such a pleasure to have you on our program, and always great to catch up with you. Go ahead and plug all your stuff for our listeners one time before I let you go.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. Best way to find me is on my website, which is embracerenewaltherapy.com. And you can find on there, I've got workshop dates, and those are all virtual. So those are accessible to anybody that has an internet connection. I have workshops that are for couples and just making sure that you and your partner have got some tools under your belt to make sure that your connection isn't going by the wayside. I have workshops on uh, parenting and some of those big parenting challenges as well. And if you want to come for a retreat and do some intensive works, I'm in Southern California, so I'm right outside of wine country, a Southern California wine country. And so I do offer intensive retreats as well that you can come do a little R&R and get some really good deep work done as well if you're needing some of that support. All of that, as I mentioned, can be found on the website, as well as the link to the podcast and see all the episodes, just like the one that Bubba and I had alluded to many times here on The Real Family Eats.
Oh, Reesa, thank you so much for all the work that you're doing with parents out there. And thank you for being part of the scene.
Thank you.